The war was finally over, or so it seemed. The sky above the ruined valley burned with fading fire, smoke curling into the dark clouds like ghosts that refused to leave. Sergeant Ethan Hale walked slowly through the battlefield, his boots sinking into wet ash. His armor was cracked, his face streaked with dirt and blood. Every step hurt, but he kept moving. He had to make sure no one was left behind, human or alien. For weeks, humans and the Xiran had fought without mercy. The Xiran were tall, proud, and strong, warriors born for battle. Their armor was alive, made from something that pulsed faintly with light like the heart of a star. Ethan had fought against them for months, seen his friends die at their hands, and yet as the silence spread across the field, he felt no anger now. Only emptiness. He moved past a fallen ship, its hull torn open. Sparks still hissed from its sides. A faint sound reached his ears. Not the hum of a machine, but something softer. A voice, human. Stop. Ethan froze instantly, raising his rifle. His instincts flared. The voice came again, weaker this time, but still sharp. Do not shoot. From behind the wreckage, something moved. A tall figure, armor cracked, blood shimmering dark blue beneath the smoke. It was a Xiran warrior. Her silver armor was scorched and broken, one shoulder half shattered. She leaned against the wreckage, breathing hard, her weapon gone. Her hair, long and silvery, clung to her skin. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting both pain and pride. Ethan aimed his rifle at her chest. Don't move. She laughed weakly, a sound that was more pain than humor. If I could move, human, I would not still be here. Her words came slow, heavy, trembling. Your army? They left? Yes, Ethan replied. And yours? Her gaze flickered toward the horizon. All gone. The silence that followed was strange, not the silence of enemies, but of survivors. Two soldiers from different worlds, both too tired to hate anymore. Ethan lowered his rifle slowly. You're bleeding, he said quietly. I have no blood left to lose, she whispered. Just help me with my armor. I cannot show weakness. Ethan hesitated. It made no sense. Why would he help her? This was the enemy. But looking at her, broken, proud, and trying not to fall, something human stirred in him. She wasn't a monster. She was a soldier, just like him. He knelt down beside her. The smell of burnt metal filled the air. Let me see. When his hand touched her armor, she flinched. Be gentle, human, she said softly. Those 3 words caught him off guard. Her voice wasn't harsh now. It was trembling, almost human in its fear. He nodded slowly. I'll be gentle, he said, his voice low and steady. Her armor wasn't like anything he had seen. It felt alive under his hands, like skin and metal fused together. He tried to open one of the plates near her wound, and she gasped in pain. Easy, she whispered, gripping his wrist. It reacts to fear. Then don't be afraid, he said quietly. She looked at him, her eyes shining faintly. Easier said than done. For the next few minutes, Ethan worked carefully, using tools from his damaged medkit to remove a shard of metal lodged beneath the armor. The alien woman bit her lip, trying not to make a sound. Every small movement hurt her, but she didn't cry out. Ethan noticed her trembling hand resting against the ground, and for a moment he covered it with his own. You're going to be fine, he said gently. Her eyes softened. You speak like no soldier I have met before. He smiled faintly. Maybe I'm tired of being one. When he finally managed to seal her armor and apply a human med patch, she let out a slow breath, her body relaxing. She leaned back against the wreckage, looking up at the gray sky. It's strange, she murmured. A human saving a Xiran. The stars will not believe this. Ethan looked at her quietly. Maybe that's how peace starts, when someone chooses to save instead of kill. The alien woman turned her head toward him, her expression unreadable. Then slowly she nodded. Perhaps you are right, human. Her breathing steadied, her eyes closing briefly. For the first time in days, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The wind blew softly through the valley, carrying away the smell of smoke and war. And there, under the broken sky, a human soldier and an alien warrior sat side by side. 2 enemies who no longer wanted to fight. And as the sun began to rise again, its light fell gently upon them, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The night grew colder as the wind howled across the empty battlefield. The smoke had started to fade. revealing stars above that shimmered like cold silver eyes. Ethan sat near the alien warrior, his hands still stained with her blue blood. He had stopped her bleeding, but her armor was damaged beyond what she could wear again. Sira, that was her name. She had whispered it softly before her strength began to fade. Commander Sira of the Ziran Legion, a warrior known for her fierce discipline and unmatched skill in combat. Yet now she was just another wounded soldier, shivering in the cold beside a human. Ethan searched through his broken pack, pulling out some tools, wires, and sealant. He wasn't sure if human tech could fix alien armor, but he had to try. She watched him carefully, her expression unreadable, her pride still standing even through her weakness. "You don't have to help me," she said, her voice low but firm. Ethan looked at her, brushing away ash from his face. "You asked me to fix your armor," he reminded her softly. "So I will." Her lips twitched, not quite a smile, not quite defiance. "You could leave me here. Many of your kind would." "Maybe," he said, his tone gentle. "But I'm not like most of my kind." He started working, carefully prying open the broken pieces of her chest plate. The armor was strange, but it seemed to hum faintly when touched, like it was alive. When he tried to remove one of the shards embedded deep near her shoulder, Sira suddenly tensed. "Be gentle, human," she whispered, her voice trembling just slightly. Ethan froze. Those words struck something deep inside him. Not because she sounded afraid, but because she trusted him enough to say it. He met her eyes. "I'll be gentle," he promised softly. She looked away, her long silver hair falling over her face. "I never thought I would say those words to a human." He smiled faintly, continuing his careful work. "And I never thought I'd be fixing an alien's armor." The air between them was quiet now, only filled by the small sounds of his tools. Every time his fingers brushed her skin through the cracks in the armor, she flinched slightly, then relaxed. Her breathing steadied. It was strange, the touch of an enemy now turned healer. "You have steady hands," she murmured. "I used to fix things before the war," he said. "Machines, ships, people." Her eyes lifted to his. "You were a medic?" He hesitated, nodding slowly. "Until I had to become a soldier." Sira's expression softened. "We are all forced to change when the stars demand it." He sealed another line of her armor with a faint hiss. The soft blue glow returned, flickering weakly. She looked down at it, almost like she didn't believe it was real. "It's responding," she said quietly. "You are actually fixing it." "Guess I'm not completely useless," Ethan said with a small smile. Sira's lips curved ever so slightly. "For a human, you're surprising." The wind grew stronger. Ethan looked around for something to cover her with, finding a torn blanket from a supply crate. He draped it over her shoulders. She stared at him in silence. "Why?" she asked simply. "Because you're cold," he said. "That's not what I meant." Her voice was soft now, almost sad. "Why help me at all? You could have left me to die." "That's what I would have done. Once." Ethan looked at her, his face serious. "Because war's over, and I'm tired of watching people die." Her eyes shimmered faintly, reflecting the dim firelight. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "You humans are strange." He smiled faintly. "You're not the first one to say that." When the wind howled again, Sira shivered slightly. Without thinking, Ethan moved closer, sitting beside her. The warmth between them was quiet, strange, but comforting. "You fight like a beast," she said softly, "yet you heal with such care." Ethan looked at her with tired eyes. "Maybe that's what makes us human. We destroy, and then we try to fix what's left." Sira turned her head toward him. For the first time, her gaze wasn't cold or guarded. It was filled with something deeper, respect. Maybe even a fragile kind of trust. "You are different, Ethan Hale," she said quietly. "Perhaps your kind still has hope." Ethan didn't answer. He just kept working, tightening the last seal on her armor as the faint hum returned to full strength. When he was done, she lifted her arm slightly, testing the joint. "It feels whole again," she said softly. "You did well, human." Ethan sat back, exhausted, his hands trembling from the cold. "Told you I'd be gentle." For the first time, Sira smiled, a real one. Small and faint, but genuine. And as the two soldiers sat beneath the ruined stars, enemies no more, the night seemed just a little less dark. The morning came slowly, breaking through the smoke with pale golden light. The battlefield that had once been filled with fire and death now looked strangely peaceful. The silence was heavy, almost sacred. The wind carried only the faint smell of burned metal and wet soil. Ethan woke up first. His back ached from sleeping on the hard ground and his muscles were stiff. He blinked, his eyes finding the figure sitting quietly near the wreckage. Commander Sira, she was awake, staring at the rising sun. Her repaired armor glowed faintly in the new light, silver and blue reflecting warmth for the first time instead of violence. There was something calm about her now. The proud warrior who had once shouted orders across a battlefield now sat silently, watching the dawn like a child seeing it for the first time. Ethan pushed himself up and walked toward her. "You should rest," he said softly. She didn't turn around. "Rest is for the safe," she replied. Her voice was gentle, not cold. "I do not know if I am safe yet." Ethan sat beside her. "You are safe with me," he said simply. She looked at him then, her eyes narrowing slightly as if studying his face. "You trust easily for a soldier." "Maybe not easily," he said, glancing at the sky. "But I've seen enough war. I'd rather try peace." Sira was quiet for a while. Her gaze drifted over the empty field. "Peace," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Your kind always speaks of peace, yet you fight harder than anyone I've seen." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe because we know what peace costs. We have to fight to earn it." She tilted her head, curious. "Strange creatures, humans." He chuckled lightly. "You're not the first one to say that either." For a long time they sat together, watching the light grow stronger. There was no sound except the wind and the faint hum of her armor. Then Sira turned toward him suddenly. "You saved me," she said softly. "Even when you could have walked away." Ethan shrugged, a small smile on his lips. "You asked for help." "I asked a human," she said, her voice quieter now. "After years of calling your kind monsters." He looked at her with tired eyes. "And now?" She didn't answer at first. Her gaze dropped to the ground, her fingers tracing the dent in her armor where the wound had been. "Now," she whispered, "I am not sure what to believe." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tag, scratched and old. "See this?" he said, showing it to her. "Dog tag. It belonged to my friend. He died trying to save an enemy medic during the early days of the war." Sira's brows furrowed slightly. "Why would he do that?" "Because that's who he was," Ethan said. "He believed no one deserves to die alone, even the enemy." For a moment she just looked at him. Then she nodded slowly. "Then he was a true warrior." Ethan blinked, a bit surprised. "That's what you'd call him?" "In my people's belief," Sira said softly. "A true warrior is not one who kills many, but one who protects those who cannot fight, even if it costs their life." Her words touched him deeply. He had expected hate, maybe pride, but not wisdom like that. "Maybe," he said quietly. "We're not so different after all." She looked up at the sky, her silver eyes catching the light. "Perhaps not. Maybe that's why the stars brought us here, to learn." There was a silence again, but it wasn't cold this time. It was warm. It was the silence of two hearts learning to understand each other. Then, after a pause, Sira said, "Human, what is your name?" "Ethan," he said. "Sergeant Ethan Hale." She repeated it softly, almost testing the sound. "Ethan," she nodded once. "A strong name," he smiled. "And yours?" She straightened slightly, her voice filled with quiet pride. "Commander Sira of Clan Vernal." "Commander," he said with a teasing tone. "Should I salute?" For the first time, Sira actually laughed, a low, soft sound that felt unreal in that broken land. "You would look ridiculous doing that," Ethan grinned. "You're probably right." Then her expression grew serious again. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer now. "I will remember you. You showed me something no weapon ever could. Mercy." He met her gaze. "And I'll remember you too, Sira. The warrior who said be gentle." Her eyes softened at the words. She looked away, her lips curving faintly. "You humans, always turning pain into poetry." "Maybe that's how we survive," he said quietly. The wind blew through the field again, lifting ashes into the morning light. For the first time since the war began, Ethan felt something more powerful than fear or anger. He felt hope. And beside him, an alien warrior from another world felt the same. In that fragile morning peace, a bond was born between two enemies who had no reason to trust each other. yet somehow did. And somewhere in the distance the stars watched silently, as if they knew this small act of kindness might change everything. The calm morning did not last. The world was quiet, too quiet, and both Ethan and Sierra felt it. The battlefield may have stopped burning, but something in the air still carried danger. The war was over on paper, yet not everyone knew that peace had begun. Sierra stood beside a fallen ship, testing her repaired armor. The joints were working again, and the blue lights pulsed faintly under the metal plates. Ethan watched her, arms crossed, trying not to show the exhaustion he felt. His body was sore, his armor damaged, and his mind heavy with the weight of too many memories. "You're getting stronger," he said softly. "I do not feel strong," Sierra replied. "I feel changed." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's stronger than most people ever get." Before she could answer, a sudden mechanical screech broke through the silence. Both of them froze. From the thick smoke behind the wreckage came a glowing red light, the lens of a combat drone. Ethan cursed under his breath. It was one of the autonomous killers left behind when the Xeran command network collapsed. The machines were still programmed to destroy anything that moved, human or alien. Sierra's hand went to her weapon, but it was half melted, useless. "My blade's power core is dead," she said quickly. Ethan didn't think. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet hit the drone's side, sparking metal and smoke, but it didn't fall. The machine turned toward him, its plasma gun charging with a deadly hum. "Get down," Ethan shouted. He pushed Sierra aside just as the blast tore through the air. The plasma bolt hit Ethan square in the chest, throwing him backward. He hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. Pain exploded across his ribs as his armor cracked, smoke rising from the burnt plates. Sierra's heart stopped. "Ethan!" she screamed. Rage lit up inside her, not the cold kind of a soldier, but something fierce and alive. She lunged forward with a sound that shook the air, grabbing the broken sword from the ground. The blade was weak, but her strength was not. The drone aimed at her, firing again, but she rolled aside, the heat grazing her shoulder. Her armor flared, energy sparking, but she didn't stop. With a roar that echoed like thunder, she leapt high, slashing down with everything she had. The blade sliced through the drone's core. A burst of fire followed, throwing her backward as the machine exploded into pieces. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was quiet again. But now the quiet felt heavier. Sierra stumbled toward Ethan, dropping to her knees beside him. His armor was blackened and his breathing was shallow. The med gel had burned off and the wound was deep. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why would you do that?" Ethan coughed weakly, a thin smile forming on his lips. "Guess. I forgot to be gentle," he said. Tears welled in her eyes. The great warrior of the Xeran, who had never shown weakness in front of anyone, now trembled. "You saved me," she said, her voice cracking. He tried to speak, his words faint. "You'd have done the same." "No," she whispered. "Not before, but now. Now I would." She pressed her glowing hand over his wound, trying to channel what little healing energy her armor had left. It wasn't enough. The alien tech wasn't built for humans, but she refused to stop. Her eyes glowed brighter as she worked, sweat running down her face. "Stay with me," she said fiercely. "Do not close your eyes." Ethan tried to smile, his voice soft and weak. "You sound like my sergeant." "Then your sergeant was wise," she said sharply, fighting tears. He reached up with one shaking hand, touching her wrist. "Hey, I told you. Be gentle." Her lips trembled, a broken laugh escaping her. "Foolish human," she whispered. "Always joking, even while dying." "I'm not dying," he said slowly. "Not yet." Sierra looked down at him, her heart aching in a way she didn't understand. She had fought countless battles, seen comrades fall, but this felt different. This felt personal. She leaned closer, her forehead touching his. "Then do not die, not here. Not after you showed me mercy." Ethan closed his eyes, his breathing slowing but steady. "If you say so." "Commander." She held him close, refusing to let him go. The wind blew dust around them, but Sierra didn't move. For the first time, she prayed, not to the gods of her people, but to the stars themselves, that the human who had saved her would live. As the sun began to sink again, painting the sky red and gold, the broken warrior and the wounded soldier sat together in the ruins of war, and somewhere in that dying light, something greater than battle was born. A bond neither human nor alien could ever truly explain. The sky darkened again, heavy clouds gathering over the silent battlefield. The smell of smoke mixed with the scent of rain, and thunder rolled softly in the distance. Sierra sat beside Ethan, her heart beating fast, her hands pressed against his wound. He was still breathing, but his pulse was weak. "Stay with me, human," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Do not make me regret trusting you." Ethan's eyes fluttered open, faint and tired. "I'm not going anywhere," he murmured weakly. "You are hurt," she said, anger and fear mixing in her voice. "You threw yourself in front of a machine for me." "Why?" he smiled faintly. "Because I fix things, not people." His words were fading, broken. Sierra clenched her jaw. "You fool," she whispered, her voice soft but full of emotion. "You would risk your life to fix someone like me?" He looked up at her, eyes half closed. "You're not someone like you," he said quietly. "You're you." Her throat tightened. She didn't understand why his words struck her so deeply. She was a warrior. She had seen death countless times. But seeing this human lying in pain because he had chosen to save her, it broke something inside her. Then the rain came, soft at first, then stronger. It washed away the ash, the blood, the smoke, cleansing everything it touched. Sierra turned her face upward, letting the drops fall across her skin. She looked at Ethan. His hair was soaked, his lips pale, his body shivering. Without a word, she moved closer, pulling him gently into her arms. He was light, fragile in her embrace. She found shelter under a broken ship wing and laid him against her chest, wrapping her cloak around him to block the rain. "Be gentle," he whispered weakly, almost smiling. Sierra's eyes softened. "You humans never stop talking even when dying," he smiled faintly. "Keeps us alive." She almost laughed, a small, shaky sound that surprised even her. Then she grew quiet again, focusing on him. She activated the energy core in her armor, letting it warm his body. A faint blue glow surrounded them, casting soft light in the darkness. Her fingers brushed his cheek, and for a moment she just looked at him, this strange, broken human who had chosen kindness over fear. His face was calm now, peaceful despite the pain. She traced the scar on his jaw and whispered, "You are strange, Ethan Hale." The rain kept falling, tapping against the wreckage like gentle music. Hours passed and Sierra never moved. She watched over him like a guardian, checking his pulse again and again, refusing to sleep. Her thoughts wandered. She remembered her first battle, the first time she was told that humans were cruel and cold. She remembered her commander's words, "They will destroy you if you show them mercy." But now she understood how wrong that was. This human had risked everything to save her, not because she was an ally, but because she was someone in need. And that, to her, was something greater than strength. It was courage of the heart. Ethan stirred slightly, whispering her name in his sleep. "Sierra." She froze, her heart skipping a beat. It was strange hearing her name from human lips, soft, unsure, yet filled with warmth. "I'm here," she said quietly. "Rest, Ethan, you're safe." The rain began to lighten. The world felt softer now. No gunfire, no screams, only the sound of life returning. When dawn finally broke, Sierra was still awake. Ethan's breathing had steadied. He opened his eyes slowly and saw her sitting beside him, her face calm, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the morning light. "You didn't sleep," he said weakly. "Warriors do not sleep when their allies are wounded," she replied firmly. "Allies?" he asked, smiling faintly. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, you earned that word." Ethan's smile grew warmer. "That's the nicest thing an alien has ever said to me." Sierra tilted her head slightly. "Do not get used to it." But the corner of her lips curved into the smallest smile. Ethan sat up slowly, his chest still aching. The rain had stopped, and the sun peeked through the clouds, shining over the wet ground. The world looked different, cleaner, newer, like something precious had been reborn. He looked at her, his voice quiet. "You stayed with me all night." Sierra looked away, pretending to adjust her armor. "You needed guarding. Humans are fragile." Ethan chuckled softly. "You're not wrong." Then he reached out, his hand brushing hers. "Thank you, Sierra." She didn't pull away. She met his eyes, her voice low. "Do not thank me, human. You gave me something I never thought I would feel again." "What's that?" he asked softly. "Peace." The word hung between them, simple but powerful. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the broken land, Sierra helped Ethan stand. Together they began to walk through the ruins, two soldiers from opposite worlds, both carrying the same fragile hope. And in that moment, for the first time since the war began, Sierra believed that maybe, just maybe, humanity was worth fighting for, not against. The sun had barely risen when the silence broke. Far in the distance, a low hum filled the air. Engines steady and powerful. Sierra lifted her head sharply, her warrior senses alert. Through the smoky horizon, she saw two ships descending, one marked with the insignia of Earth's United Defense Force, and the other bearing the dark wings of the Xeran Empire. "Your people," Ethan whispered, his voice weak but steady. Sierra nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing. "And yours." The two ships landed on opposite sides of the ruined battlefield, dust and wind swirling around them. Soldiers began to pour out, humans in steel-gray armor and Xeran warriors in shining black suits. Each group looked at the other with old suspicion, hands tight on their weapons. Sierra felt her pulse quicken. She knew what this meant. If they found her with a human, both sides might see betrayal. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "You should go," he said softly. "If they see us together—" "No," she interrupted firmly, her voice trembling slightly. "You would not leave me when I was wounded." "I will not leave you now," he smiled faintly. "You're stubborn." "I learned it from you," she said, her tone almost warm. The sound of shouting grew closer. Human soldiers spotted movement among the wreckage and rushed forward. At the same time, Xeran warriors advanced from the other side. Within seconds, both sides were facing each other across the torn ground, weapons ready, tension thick in the air. Ethan tried to stand but stumbled, clutching his side. Sierra quickly caught him, her arm steady around his shoulder. "Stand down," a human commander shouted. "Put the alien down, soldier." "She's not a threat," Ethan called back, his voice hoarse. One of the Xeran captains aimed her blaster toward the humans. "Release our warrior or die where you stand." Chaos trembled in the air. A single spark could start another battle. Sierra's eyes darted between the two groups. She knew she had to do something before everything fell apart again. Slowly she stepped forward, still supporting Ethan. "Stop," she shouted, her voice clear and commanding. "No one fires." Both sides hesitated, not because they trusted her, but because of the power in her tone. Even the wind seemed to pause. Sierra continued, her voice steady. "The war is over for this field. There is no enemy left here, only survivors." A murmur ran through both sides. The human commander frowned, uncertain. The Xeran captain lowered her weapon slightly but kept her glare fixed on Ethan. "He saved me," Sierra said firmly, her voice softening as she looked at the man beside her. "This human risked his life to protect mine. If you call him an enemy, then I am the same." Her words fell like thunder in the silence. The human soldiers exchanged confused glances. The commander hesitated. "He did what?" Ethan's voice was faint, but he nodded. "She saved me too," he said quietly. "If it weren't for her, I'd be gone." The Xeran captain stepped forward, disbelief in her eyes. "You fought beside a human?" Sierra met her gaze without fear. "I fought beside a warrior. The name does not matter." For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, the tension began to break. Weapons lowered, though not completely. The storm in the air started to calm. The human medic team rushed to Ethan's side, but when they tried to pull him away from Sierra, she tightened her grip. "Gently," she warned, her voice sharp. One of the medics blinked in surprise, recognizing the phrase she had once said to him. "Be gentle, human." Ethan smiled faintly through the pain. "Guess that makes us even." Sierra helped them lift him onto a stretcher, never taking her eyes off him. When the medics moved him toward the human ship, she turned toward her own people. The Xeran captain spoke quietly. "You have brought shame to your rank, Sierra of the 7th line. You chose an enemy over your duty." Sierra's jaw tightened. "I chose life over pride," she replied. "If that is shame, then I accept it." The captain's eyes softened slightly, then she turned away. "Your actions will be judged by the council." Sierra didn't answer. Her gaze stayed on the human ship, where Ethan lay under a thin blanket. He turned his head, searching for her through the open ramp. Their eyes met, one last silent look. He raised his hand weakly in a small wave. Sierra lifted her own hand to her chest, the Xeran gesture of respect and farewell. The ship doors closed slowly, sealing him inside. As the engines roared and the human craft rose into the sky, Sierra stood alone among the wreckage, the rain beginning to fall again. For the first time in her life, she felt truly divided in between two worlds, two hearts, and one impossible truth. The enemy she had been taught to hate had shown her what it meant to be human, and she knew, deep inside, that their story was not over yet. Months passed since the battle that had ended their war. The skies that once burned with fire now glowed with soft light. Human and Xeran ships no longer fought in orbit. They flew together under banners of peace. But peace, like healing, was slow and fragile. Ethan Hale walked through the grand hall of the Alliance Embassy, his steps echoing on the metal floor. His side still ached where the wound had nearly taken his life, but he had recovered. What never healed completely was the silence that followed Sierra's departure. He hadn't seen her since that day on the battlefield. Every night he remembered her silver eyes, the way she whispered, "Be gentle, human," and the warmth in her voice when she had called him her ally. Now, months later, fate had brought him here, to a meeting between the two species. The first true peace council. He was one of the few humans invited to represent the soldiers who had lived through the worst of it. The air in the hall was thick with tension and history. Humans stood on one side, Xeran on the other, their faces proud and cautious. Between them sat the symbol of peace, a small silver flame burning quietly on the table. Then the doors opened. Sierra entered. She was dressed in ceremonial armor this time, not the battle-worn suit Ethan had seen before. Her long hair shimmered like strands of night silver, and the marks of her rank gleamed across her chest. But there was something different in her eyes, softer, quieter, almost human. Ethan froze, breath catching in his throat. She looked around the hall, her gaze calm but searching, until it found him. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. The noise of the hall faded. It was just them again, like the night under the broken sky. Ethan smiled faintly. Sierra didn't smile, but her eyes softened, the smallest flicker of warmth breaking through her warrior mask. The meeting began. Voices filled the room, agreements, promises, the slow work of peace. Ethan barely heard a word. His heart was somewhere else, in the quiet space between memory and hope. When the session ended, he found her standing near the balcony, looking at the stars. He walked toward her slowly, uncertain. She didn't turn when she spoke. "You came." "I wasn't going to miss this," he said softly. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "You were not supposed to," she replied, her voice low. "I was recalled." Judged by my counsel, he frowned. "They punished you?" Her jaw tightened slightly. "No, they questioned me. They wanted to know why a Xeran warrior would risk her life for a human, why I would speak of peace instead of vengeance. And what did you tell them?" She turned to him then, her eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. "I told them that war taught me nothing, but a human taught me what strength truly means." Ethan smiled, his chest tightening. "You always had more strength than me." She tilted her head slightly, the ghost of a smile forming. "No, you had a different kind. You fixed what others destroyed." They stood in silence, the stars reflected in the glass. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of metal, a broken shard from her old armor. "I kept this," he said quietly. "It reminded me of you." Sierra's gaze softened. She took the piece carefully in her hands, her fingers brushing against his. "And I kept something too," she said. From her belt, she drew a small patch, the human insignia from his uniform, worn and faded. "I never understood your symbols," she continued, "but I understood the meaning behind them." "What's that?" he asked gently. "Loyalty," she whispered. "And care." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was full of all the words they hadn't said, the bond that had grown between two enemies who had found each other in the ruins. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "So, what now?" Sierra looked at the stars. "Now we rebuild. Not as soldiers, but as something better." He nodded. "And us?" Her eyes lingered on him, deep and calm. "Our paths may not cross again, human," she said softly. "But know this. When I fight for peace, I will remember the man who taught me to be gentle." Ethan's throat tightened. "And I'll remember the warrior who made me believe peace was worth it." The wind moved between them, carrying the faint hum of engines outside, ships leaving for distant worlds. Sierra stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest where his heart beat strong beneath the scars. "Do not forget Ethan Hale," she said gently. "Even when the stars are far apart, the light still reaches." He covered her hand with his, holding it for one last moment. "Goodbye, Sierra." She nodded once, her voice quiet but sure. "Not goodbye, just until we meet again." Then she turned and walked away, her armor shining faintly as she disappeared down the long corridor, her steps fading like the last echo of a song. Ethan watched her go, his heart both heavy and light. Outside, the stars burned bright, not as distant enemies anymore, but as witnesses to something rare and human, two souls from different worlds who had found kindness in the heart of war. And somewhere among those stars, he hoped she was smiling.